I'm really pleased to welcome up our next moderator. He was here yesterday. He's here today. He's a fellow expat here in France, and he's probably one of the smartest people when it comes to tech. So, ladies and gentlemen, Chris O'Brien from Venturebeat and his panelists.
Okay. Welcome. Good morning. Thank you for being here. So our topic is data, and we're going to get right to it and wake ourselves up here. I'm going to just ask each of you, starting right here, to introduce yourself. Some companies may be better known than others, but still tell us a little bit about your role at the company and how you intersect with the topic of data in your role there.
So I guess I'm starting.
Yes.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Ourghanlian. I'm the Chief Technology and Security Officer at Microsoft in France. So I'm in charge of all technology-related subjects, from the Xbox console to the public cloud. And all those environments are generating more and more data, as you could imagine. So we now have more than 1 exabyte of storage, 10 at the 80th bytes in our public cloud environment today, which means that we are putting more and more emphasis on how to cope with data, how to offer resilient storage to our customers, and everything related to the Internet of Things is generating more and more data. So data is at the center of everything we do today.
Great.
Hi, everyone. My name is Romain Lacombe. I am the founder and CEO of Plume Labs. And Plume Labs is a startup that builds tools and services to help us all breathe better. We use data, a lot of data, to build real-time monitoring services for air quality worldwide. So our latest app is actually in the App Store as of 2 weeks ago. It's the Plume Air Report. It helps you track what you breathe in about 60 cities worldwide, here in France, but also in Asia, in the US, giving you, thanks to open data, meaning access to live measurements, but also to smart data, a topic I'm sure we'll talk about, and data prediction models that we're building off of AI and data sciences. We're predicting how pollution is going to change over the next 24 hours in this city, and that gives you tools to understand when is a good time to go running and when you should run for cover and protect yourself. And that's actually a major lever for health, for well-being. I won't get into all the data about why we care about the air we breathe, why it kills 7 million people worldwide. Here in Paris, we lose 6 months of life expectancy to particulate matter, one of those nasty pollutants. But in a nutshell, we use data to empower people to get control over their environment.
Great.
Good morning, everybody. I'm David Thoumas. I'm co-founder and CTO of OpenDataSoft. So we are surrounded by with a massive amount of data. Let me tell you how we deal with this. You all know some business users whose main concern is about valuing their data. The funny fact here is that they know how to do this. They know how to value their data. It's just about letting designers and developers design and develop new services by filling them with APIs, providing them with data coming from internal and external data sources. And it's about experimenting, adapting, and scaling. So what's the problem? The problem is that they do not have any real solution for doing this. And that's because we've met with a lot of people like this, that we have created OpenDataSoft, a kind of a turnkey software as a service solution with a pay-as-you-go business model, and that lets non-technical users publish, share, and reuse data with APIs, data visualization, and data sharing. Okay? We are working with a customer base of 40 global players, building open data portals, and playing in smart city projects with utility companies, transportation companies, and IoT actors. Many smart consulting firms have said it already. Data is a new product. And we know that, and that's what we are doing with OpenDataSoft when building a kind of online place where everyone in the world will be able to share and reuse data.
Great.
Hi everybody, I'm Camille, Loth, Chief Marketing Officer for M2OCT. M2OCT is a joint venture between Veolia and Orange, the telecom operator. And we are the first and the French leader in terms of connected objects. We build infrastructure in France. We don't have a global but a local approach. We build infrastructure low rate and long range to connect objects in the city. Our customers are mainly local authorities, utilities, and as well as enterprise. And the fact is that we connect objects to serve the objectives of optimization, of transformation of the cities. We cover today more or less 2,000 cities in France, and with 1.5 million objects, we have huge data issues every day because we have to collect them, prepare them, and deliver all these data to our customer with a service approach. Definitely, we don't sell infrastructure, we sell a telecom service to connect objects in the cities.
So you had an astounding statistic about the amount of data that's coming into your realm. But I'm wondering, particularly with the growth of connected objects, have you seen that rate of growth accelerate, or is it still just a steady climb?
So it's not a steady climb, it's more an exponential climb. So we are getting about 7 petabytes of new storage every month, which means that the amount of storage that we are ingesting inside our data center is pretty huge. What I think is very important as far as the Internet of Things is concerned is the fact that we have to treat events and data in real time, which means that we need to have enough computing power, network bandwidth in order to ingest this amount of data. So as an example, we have created inside our cloud environment software named Event Hub, whose goal is to ingest events. And we are able to ingest in just one of those hubs about 1 million of events every second. And if you count all the event hubs that we have installed in our cloud facilities, 90 regions worldwide, we are able to ingest about 80 billion events every day. And that's the amount of information we need to cope in order to, as an example, get real-time data from connected cars or anything like that, where the number of events is huge, just huge.
So then the question seems to be, you're ingesting this stuff, more points at which we're collecting it. I mean, let's start with that, I guess the opportunity, which I think you guys are also focused on. What value can we really extract from the data? And again, it seems like in that part, I think of two things. One, just what does the data now tell us? And then it sounds like you're also focusing on what would be the holy grail, which is the predictive part, not just what's happening to me now, but what can I learn about the future, hopefully?
Well, thank you for, I guess, answering my question as well, because I love how you bring together those two aspects of things. I think what's fascinating about what we can do with data today, data as a source, as a product, as David mentioned, but also data as a tool, is that it helps us see things that to consumers, to companies, to economic actors, to political actors as well, to cities, governments, were just not visible. Really, data at its core, and this data revolution we're entering is about making phenomena visible, making the invisible visible. And you could, think about literally thousands and maybe gigabytes of examples of this. In our case, what's been most interesting in the response that we got so we just introduced, again, we're a 9-person team, we're a startup growing fast, and we just introduced our first product, this urban weather forecast app that tells you what you breathe in your city, that helps us adapt to your environment so you don't suffer from pollution as much without knowing it. And what's been really interesting in the way consumers have reacted to it over the past few days is a lot of the reviews we get is, wow, finally I get to understand this thing. And again, it's a very specific focus. We're all concerned, of course, by air quality because most of us breathe. At least I try to do regularly.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. But it's not something that we necessarily identify as something on which data gives us power. It turns out once you understand just how much pollution changes day in, day out on an hourly basis, from the morning to the evening, just how it literally is like the weather. And it's crazy that when you think of it, when we go to the beach, we have the weather forecast for how much UV we'll get when you go skiing. Sometimes, if you live in Toulouse, right? So I'm sure you get plenty of. Yes. You know how much powder there is. Well, we spend our days, our lives in cities, and we don't think about the air pollution we breathe. So very much once you have access to this information, it changes the way you live your environment, and it's a very empowering experience. And that's coming from our users. But then what's even more interesting once you get to make what's around us visible is that you can delve into the predictive aspect of things. And there's now a flurry of really interesting tools, services, French companies making headways in that space as well. I'm probably sure someone from Dataiku must have spoken at the conference, and if not, I mean, there are some really interesting tools to build algorithms to predict patterns around data that really speeds up the work of data scientists and data science teams. And so one of the things we're most proud of having built today is this engine that tells you exactly how, thanks to data from, of course, pollution sources, but also all sorts of environmental information, that tells you exactly how the pollution level in your city is going to change hour by hour. Not just, yesterday it was good or bad, and tomorrow is going to be more or less the same, but really when things are going up, when they're going down, and that makes all the difference. Because once you're able to plan your day as a consumer, as a runner, as a young mother or father, and you're wondering when should I go out with my kid, it makes all the difference to be able to predict how things will evolve on an hourly basis. Yeah. So data as a tool to make our environment understandable.
Yes, and so David, when people are coming to your platform, I mean, are you getting the sense that it would seem like they're just taking some of the initial steps to try to understand that data that they have to unlock some of the initial value of it?
Yeah, so a couple of things here. I mean, our platform is built for, making the data flow as fluent as possible. Okay, so it's a kind of gateway to let some people publish data so that they can be reused by others. So we are really on a kind of data network or social data network approach. What we see is that, first going back to the basics, all what we are talking about regarding analytics, predictive, and etc. is made possible because now we have the technologies that are able to transport and examine any single piece of data. When I say piece of data, I mean that, let me take a simple example. Do you know how many trees you have in Paris? Okay.
No.
But you do. You do.
I do. There are 3 300,000 trees in Paris. Okay? It's a kind of small amount of data file in size. It's a very small file. However, the fact that this file contains 300,000 elements, which with each of them having a real value for someone, for urbanists, architects, or whoever, is a key point here. Okay, so what we see is that people are starting using our platforms or platforms like ours to start getting sense of the tiny parts of what composes their data assets. Okay, and then on top of that, they can easily, imagine further improvements and developments with more complex approach, with business approach, with analytics and predictive approach. And this is really happening now. I mean, we see it every day.
Yeah, and that seems to be part of the trick then, because with, I think we all know, we're all here, so we're aware that there's this massive volume of data coming in, and then you can pull out interesting data points like the number of trees, and you think, oh, well, that's interesting. It's good to talk about at a cocktail party. But the question then beyond that is, what does it mean to me? How do I use that in the world to make decisions, or what is that telling me about the world that I didn't really understand in terms of, just using the trees as an example. And it sounds like you're connecting people with, there's the data, but then there's the meaning or the usefulness of that data after you've sort of put it out there. And it sounds like then tell me how that feeds into what you guys are doing.
Yeah, this is definitely the issue with the use is how the people will be able to use not all of that data, because you cannot be interested or look at every data that are collecting when we're talking about the Internet of Things. So the issue for us is to find a way that for a customer to get the information. The big data is finally, you will collect information from the field, you need to use it, but our customers have less means, financial means, less people, financial pressure, economic pressure, because they have to reduce every year their functioning cost, etc. So this is for us, this big amount of data is just about decision making, as you said just now. And the way now where we need to concentrate, we don't have really difficulties to collect information, to plug things everywhere. You can see it here. We have many connected objects that are emerging everywhere in the world. The fact now is to concentrate on the use and to concentrate on the information that we need to get out of this massive amount of data. And this is really tricky, actually, because there is the question of the way of consumption of the customer, how they consume the data, when they need it, what type of information they need. If we talk about, for example, smart metering, which is our principal field of activity, nobody needs to know how much he has consumed each hour or each 10 minutes. They need to know if there is a big difference between yesterday and today. They need to know if there is something wrong, that there is consumption that shouldn't be there because nobody is at home. This is the kind of information that we have to extract from this massive amount of data and expose it the right way. And this is a big issue, actually, because it changed quite everything in today's life. As you said before, it makes invisible visible. But what you will do with this yesterday invisible information, you are not used to use this type of information. So you have to find a way to integrate it in everyday life, finally. So this is for us a big issue, to find the uses of the customer and to find the way that they need to consume the information to make their activity or their processes better.
Yeah, and my sense in general, and it's always a little dangerous to generalize about these things, but I see often people very optimistic and excited about the potential. They have a sense that we are on the cusp of this big revolution, and yet frustration that they're not able to sort of grab the reins or really make that leap into just having this tidal wave of data coming at them and then taking that next step to getting the meaning. And I think you see this in all sorts of surveys from people like Gartner and IDC, where the people will say, data is my #1 priority, but maybe some tiny percent, like 10 or 20% of businesses saying, we really feel like we're using it well, or we're taking advantage of the opportunity. I'm curious, from Microsoft, I mean, you work with a lot of consumers, of course, but also a lot of big corporate clients. I mean, is that the sense you have, that are businesses really making headway into taking advantage of this, or are they still really just at the front end of trying to understand all of these things?
I think it depends a lot on the companies, how mature they are on those kind of topics, but we already have very big customers which are really able to take advantage of data, analytics, machine learning, Internet of Things. I can give you one example which is very easy to understand. We have set up about 1 year ago a partnership with a worldwide company named ThyssenKrupp. They are building elevators, and they have about 1 million, more than 1 million elevators in the world, and they are supposed to maintain it, all this set of elevators in such a way that there isn't any broken elevator where people are stuck in the building trying to get up. And so they'll build a network of sensors where every elevator is equipped with a lot of sensors, and using connected sensors network and the power of the cloud, they've been able to build predictive models in order to be sure that the maintenance of the elevators is done before the elevator breaks, which was not the case before. And so they are able to send maintenance people to the elevator site before the elevator breaks. And it means that their end user customer is a lot more happy, and also the fact that the maintenance cost has decreased a lot, because usually you do your maintenance periodically, like every 3 months or every 6 months, and sometimes it doesn't make sense to do any maintenance because the elevator is in good shape, there is no need to do anything. At the same time, there are cases where the elevator is about to break and there is nobody present on site, so the end user customer is very upset, and so on and so forth. So this is a very easy to understand case where you are able to create value, and in order to do so, you just need, which is not very easy to do at the first step, to change your habits, your maintenance culture inside the company. So within large company, moving to the IoT, big data, machine learning environment is usually a cultural shift, which is not always very easy to do. You have to understand that you could potentially create a lot of value from your data, potential data that you have but you are not taking advantage of. So it's, I think, much easier for a small company to do so, and I think this is why the Internet of Things field is so full of startups, because it's very easy to think about a new scenario and try to make sense from this scenario. For a large company, it takes a while, because you need to rethink entirely how you do business, how you interact with your customers, how you train your field force, and so on and so forth. So I think cultural shift is also something very important to understand.
Now, you're working more with individual consumers. So it sounds like when people get their hands on your product, they're making the shift pretty quickly. They don't have to worry about the infrastructure or the culture or things like that.
That's actually, well, you used the word in your previous question that I found really interesting. You talked about meaning. And, well, it got me thinking, if we don't see data around us, if there's this sort of looming frustration of, okay, we talk about data all the time, but where is it? Where can I actually see it? It might actually be because designers, because data innovators, data scientists, entrepreneurs actually do their job well, and so data disappears into our everyday lives, right? When we think about this is an Apple Watch, just in case the way this works, it really feeds data into our lives in a way that weaves into the pattern of our days, which makes it interesting because it creates meaning at the moment when we need it. Right? So that's exactly the approach we have, and our core product, our core technology, which we'll be unveiling a prototype of it in 2 weeks' time at Future en Scène, is actually a personal device. It's a wearable device that will tell you exactly what you breathe, so that consumers can be empowered to make changes in their everyday lives to improve their health, their well-being, by breathing better, by being less exposed to pollution. The goal here is not to be surrounded by data all the time. It's just to have more peace of mind, because data brings you meaning when you need it. It brings you actionable levers to make your life better. And so when we think of how data improves lives in cities, when we think about urban tech and these startups that connect our cities, I'm thinking of, there's this French startup called Caros. They're the sort of local version of BlaBlaCar. They use big data algorithms to bring drivers and passengers together, because it turns out on our daily commutes in the Paris greater area, there's about 15 million trips every day of empty seats on our roads. It means that 90% of the passenger seats that commute every day are empty. It makes no sense at all. If we can use data to bridge this gap between people who have cars and people who might not want to have to own one, but just ride along with someone, we can create huge economic value, we can create huge social value, and we can actually create meaning. So it's not really about the data. We don't want to see the data. We want to see the results of this. Right. Another, maybe last very practical point, but if you want to see what data in action looks like, I mean, there's no better place than the Autodesk stand there, where there's maybe the most badass bike I've ever seen. It's 3D printed. It's a very, very interesting way of showcasing the work that makers and innovators can do with tools such as, I guess, Autodesk's 3D design products. And very much what matters there is the empowerment of users. It's not the data, it's the way this software, it's the way what can be done with this software makes our lives better. And a bike like this, I mean, I use it every day.
David, I wonder then, just to flip this around for a second, data is very seductive, because we want to believe that it will point us to an absolute truth, because facts don't lie, and we have a big chart with a lot of numbers on it. Do you worry that, well, as you see people start to come onto your platform to look for that meaning, to build the data sets and visualize them, do you ever look at some of these things happening and think, well, they might be misreading the data, or there's some bias there, or they're putting too much faith in what they're doing?
This is a real problem, and there the concepts and precepts of open data are really key. Data shouldn't be released as a raw set of files without any context. So contextualization is key. Data needs to be described. We need to know where it comes from, when it was last updated, what this field is about, what this value and this type of value is about. So that's one very important point. And the global open data rush helps to reach that goal, because private businesses are adopting this approaches to manage their own data and data sets. However, even with that, I mean, data is subjective. I mean, there is no way to, I mean, data is and will remain subjective, so, and it's not a problem. I mean, from my point of view, it's not a problem. What's key is how you build services and how you renew usages out of this data and how you explain why it's true in the context where you are using it.
Yeah. So you also, I think in an email, had raised the subject of small data. I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit more about what you meant by that in the context of small data versus big data. And
it was more or less what I was talking about earlier. Is from this enormous amount of data, you need to extract something that is precise at the right time and actionable. As everybody says, I think around the table, we need a lot of infrastructure. We need a lot of processing. We need a lot of machine space to collect everything. But anyhow, this is not what the customer is the final customer, the final user of this service is going to use. It's going to use the one information that he needs according to his business case, his situation. If he wants to get out to run, as you said earlier, you want to know if it's the right time or not. So this is just like a concept that is maybe turning a little bit the big data issue into the uses. You need to find out what is the information that is going to be used and how it's going to be used to focus on the customer use case. Maybe just to rebound on your previous question, there is a really important issue too. It's the reliability of the data you use, because when we're talking about Internet of Things, you have different type of qualities of sensors. They are not as reliable as others. And when you start to make decision making on data, you need to know the sources, if it's reliable, if you get the right connectivity to be able to build a service on it. If you get the data once a month and you're supposed to get it every day, of course you get a problem. And if the data you get is not right, for air quality, for example, it's very important because you have any type of sensors from $1 to maybe $500, and you don't get the same level of precision. Then if you start to make decision making on data that is not reliable, you'll have a big problem. You think you're getting smarter and you're creating your smart city, but based on wrong information, it's going to be catastrophic. So there are different ways to look at it, but it's obviously one of the points I think we can rise up.
So I think we've just got a couple of minutes left here. So very quickly, looking ahead now as we're seeing this huge ramp of data, this exponential growth, as you said, what are the challenges that we're facing here? Is it, again, primarily just finding that meaning and extracting useful decision-making process, or do we also worry that consumers or businesses start to get nervous about the sense of just our ability to track everything in this new world, whether it's your car or your health?
So I think you are right. There are some obstacles we need to tackle. As an example, data privacy is a very hot topic those days. We need to address who the data belongs to is another very important topic. Are you the owner of your data, or is the company to which you use their device or their storage or their cloud is the owner of your data because you have stored those data there? That's a question that should be solved. At the device level, there are also a lot of topics related to interoperability. As an example, when you look at all the devices which are currently being used in a house, it's very difficult to make sure that one device is able to talk to the other one without moving to the cloud and back. So those are the kind of topics that should be addressed, because in order for consumers, customers to provide their data, they should be able to trust their provider in some way. At the same time, we need to make sure that all the devices are able to work together in a very smooth way without having a lot of pain to go through in order to integrate all the devices in your day-to-day life. As an example, if you have a smart meter able to measure the temperature, and at the same time you have another system which is able to influence your air conditioner or your data temperature in the house, you need those two devices to be able to work together. Otherwise, for the end user customer, it will be very, very painful.
Very briefly, I think I absolutely concur with the fact that data is becoming the key political issue of our age, of our generation, so to speak. I think that's what we will have to define exactly. How do we make sure that data works for the people rather than the other way around? And what makes this debate fascinating is the fact that, yes, to some extent, there's a lot of concerns to be had around surveillance, around privacy. These are terms we hear a lot about. But at the same time, data is literally a tool for empowerment. Certainly, when we all get access to our genomics data and to the sequence of our own DNA, it's going to raise incredibly complex questions about how personal this data is and how social it is as well, given the fact that we all share some aspect of this, that it will become one of the pillars of our health care system as well. But it also means that we'll be able to be much more precise in the way we treat diseases. Same thing with open data. It literally is a tool in which governments become more transparent, become more attuned to the needs and expectations of their citizens. So data is, of course, a very complex issue, but it's a really, really promising political lever and tool for empowerment and for change. And what might be the key to figuring out how to make data work for us is not data science. It's not big data. It's not the tools around data. To me, it's really about design, because that's what translates technology into meaning in our everyday lives. So data design, that's the key. Thank you.
I won't add many things to that. I am perfectly in line with the fact that the current challenge is about opening data. Opening does not mean making it available to anyone without security, etc. Opening means public authorities need to open their data. Private businesses need to rethink the way they operate internally and the way they exchange assets with their partners and customers. Maybe by creating new business models and so on. So the point to me is about letting that data flow, opening that data to others, and make it of the best quality as possible.
Let our data go surfing, right? That'll be the...
You get the last word.
I don't have much left to say after all these brilliant conclusions. But yeah, I just would say focus on the uses. We use today maybe 10% of the data that are collected. 60% are purely lost. They're never used in any way. So we have to find a way that in the fashion effects that we benefit from today, we don't lose the people, we don't lose the customer by making it too complicated, and find really the way people are going to use them to be able to make their lives and their businesses better.
Great. I think that's a wrap. I want to thank all you guys for coming out this morning, and thank you all for being here bright and early to kick things off today. And thank you for a great discussion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, everybody.